Hello and welcome to Books and Landscape, and my name is Amanda Davey, and today is something completely different, really different for me, because usually I keep well away from the news and current events because I want a bit of light touch even when I'm talking about wartime across the South Downs National Park. But anyway, the last few days have been a tidal wave of stuff everywhere about the Cambridge professor Jason Arday, and my experience of Cambridge is distant, so it's not about that, but I went to university twice and I worked in a university, so there's all sorts of shenanigans that I witnessed, and I don't think that the things that went wrong in Cambridge are unique to what happened there. The universities and the people who make decisions don't necessarily make the decisions for the reasons that we all expect them to make, and it's incredibly sad and incredibly difficult. I'm not getting into the race side of things either, because I did when I worked at Sussex, it was in the School of African and Asian Studies, and it was magnificent to have so much multiculturalism going on. I'm not ignoring it, it's just that what I'm talking about is irrelevant to that as an issue. So, well, sort of irrelevant, because I will refer at the end to this amazing book, and there's a sort of an element, I suppose, but it's again irrelevant in terms of what was actually going on. So when I was at school, I decided not to go to university, which is bizarre, having spent so much time in them. Then I realised I'd have to do something else instead, so quickly decided that maybe it was a better idea to go. My mother's father was a maths teacher who was a Cambridge graduate and had stayed in contact with his contemporaries, had taught many Cambridge scholars, and my uncle went to Cambridge as a maths scholar, and Simon was a natural sciences Cambridge graduate, so all sorts of distant links to do with it. When I was applying to university, my grandfather wanted me to go to Cambridge, and he said he could get me in through the back door. He could pick up the phone. And I said, no thank you, I wanted to do it on merit. And I didn't believe that my merit was quite up to the Cambridge side of things. I mean, the idea of me standing on a stage doing footlights was impossible. I could hardly string a word together. So I courteously declined his very kind, disturbing offer, because he was a man of integrity, so what was he doing anyway? But it turns out that Cambridge does tend to have different ways that you can get in that are not just by passing exams really, really well and being really, really brilliant. Other universities do the same. If you're good at sports, you've got an in. Then I was at Exeter University doing geography. Most of it was physical geography. That I wanted to come out with a BSc, and my final year tutor to do my dissertation was a great man, internationally a great man, called Harley, Dr. Brian Harley, and he's still revered many years after his death. But when I was there, he was being bullied by the powers that be within the university, not supported by his professor, but his professor was getting a little long in the tooth, because they wanted him to take early retirement, and that would then free them up to appoint somebody cheaper, presumably. They were totally oblivious of his international standing. I think they've done that across the board. I've got another story about it as well. So it is important that there is chances and opportunities, but it is also important that the talent does not get destroyed simply for statistics and simply for some sort of logistical power play that's going on. So it was devastating that this genius, he went off and had a very successful, well-supported, well-funded career in America, but his heart was broken by what he was put through, and I'm certain that his early death was as a result of what they put him through, pushing and bullying him until he accepted early retirement. I then went to work at Sussex University as a map curator, so I was technical staff rather than academic staff, so I didn't have any teaching to do, which was nice. And on my first day, the chairman, he wasn't a professor, but the chairman of our subject group, the geography subject group, came up to me. I think he shook my hand, I can't remember, and basically the next thing he said was, if I'd been in the room when you were interviewed, you wouldn't have been appointed. So I laughed, because what else do you do? And then 20 years later, the penny finally dropped that he'd basically said that because I was a female and he wanted it to be a male. But I didn't really, I wasn't quite sure what he was on about at the time. I was only 24. I was cheap. They'd gone for the cheap option. Then it became very apparent that he was not necessarily the most his integrity was a little bit compromised by jealousy and favouritism. So there was a really, really nice chap who never did any research, and it was supposed to be that research was a big thing, but they covered up for him, the gang that used to go off to coffee together. There was another academic who was brilliant in his research, and the students loved him. So the students didn't really like the chairman particularly, and this brilliant academic, popular academic, got no furtherance whatsoever. I don't even know if he got made senior lecturer. He certainly didn't get any higher than that. And then about 15 years later, when the chairman retired, I was at a do celebrating somebody else's retirement, and I asked him how things were after this chap had retired, and he said, well, yeah, good, actually, thank you. He'd been given 3 professorships as a result, because basically the university had blocked his career because of the influence of the chairman, who was never considered good enough to be a professor himself, so he was taking it out on the talent below. So, and at the moment I'm working on the book that my husband was working on his mentor, Dr. Francis Rose, who was another really, really important, famous, internationally renowned biogeographer. He was, Francis was a botanist, a bryologist, an ecologist, a lichenologist. He is still the writer of The Wildflower Key, multiple books on lichens and air pollution, and again, a big name in ecology, which is why this biographical memoir is so important. And he was a reader. I think he managed to get to reader at King's College, London. But again, his career was blocked because of academic jealousy and the fact that he was good at what he did and was popular in the big outside world. And the university and the system did not celebrate this. They basically pushed him to early retirement. I think he was in his 60s, so and then went on to publish his books after he retired, he certainly didn't give up doing anything. The travel that he managed was extraordinary. But again, thrown away. So universities have some thinking to do, and it might be that this Jason Arday stuff has thrown up so many questions that need to be looked at in terms of quite why and how things get scrutinised and people have the power that they have. So that it was the administrators at Exeter and it was the academic staff at King's College and at Sussex that were blocking things or confusing things or going in for protectionism, basically. So that leads to the book, because this is always about books and things to do with the landscape, and maps and botany, of course, are very much to do with the landscape. So Who Wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls was written by Norman Golb some time ago, and it came as a book club book years ago, and I did mention it in a live video that I did in June, and it's written by somebody who was blocked from access to studying the Dead Sea Scrolls when he was starting out his career, by somebody who had basically taken on the Dead Sea Scrolls as his career and had come up with some very early theories as to who wrote them, why they were written, how they were written, where they were written, and stuck with that for the next 30 or 40 years. And that the more that he looked, the more that he found his early ideas didn't match with what he was finding, so he made it more and more difficult for outside researchers to have a look and to try and work out what was actually going on. So Norman Golb has a wonderful theory about why there's so many different centuries worth, so many, and they're found in so many different caves scattered across. And why would an essaying community of scribes do what the early theories purported, and is now in every book that's written apart from this one? I think it's not my field of interest, but I am interested in academic protectionism and the fact that it blocks research, it blocks ideas, and it deductive reasoning is where you have a theory and then you make the facts fit, and that's a bit like a policeman who decides who the criminal is and doesn't actually look for any other evidence that might throw up the real culprit. Then inductive looks at the facts, maybe has an idea where it might be pointing, but lets the facts lead to the conclusions. And you need a little bit of both, but mainly inductive. So anyway, very different to usual, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do next, because I've more or less run out of puff on the themes from the church's book. I'm going to have a think. So anyway, thank you for watching. It would be lovely if you could like, if you could subscribe, if you could comment, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.